In our last video, we talked about how this was just the beginning of our healing journey. And we are really excited to take you in deeper where it all started, where our healing journey started, because we really realized, like we shared, that whatever you don't deal with, your kids will. And that really has been so foundational for everything that we do. And I'm excited for Dan to tell you this part of his story, because when I first learned about what he experienced as a kid, it really gave me a lot of compassion. And honestly, it's when I really first saw his heart, saw the depth of his heart. And so I'm excited for him to share.
I guess, every story has a beginning. And like we were sharing, the stuff that I felt insecure and I feel pain over, this is part of that story. So I'm 8 years old and I'm in bed. My mom has tucked me in and she said that she's gonna make me pancakes in the morning, which was my favorite. And so I'm pretty excited. And I went to bed and I woke up in the middle of the night and there were sirens and there was boot prints of paramedics tramping through the house. And I had no idea what was going on. And I found out later that my mom's getting taken to the hospital because she suffered a cardiac arrest. This wasn't entirely out of the blue. My mom found out when she was 14, she had a major heart issue. That's when she had her first open heart surgery. And all through her life, she, was basically told by doctors, hey, live it up because you're gonna live till you're 30 and that's it. And so that's actually even the reason why I was adopted, is because they couldn't have kids. And so they adopted. But in any case, it's a little backstory to the backstory. I'm now going to the hospital. I'm finding out that my mom is in a coma and she actually stayed in that coma for 23 days. My dad was going to pull the plug and then they said she miraculously came out of it. I mean, we still don't know how or why, but I'm 8 years old. I'm praying for my mom. I'm just grateful that she did. And the doctor said that whatever part of herself she would regain would happen by the time, a year, kind of gave like a year window. Well, I'm praying and praying and praying, and a year came and went, and her condition didn't improve at all. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but that was later the core of a great deal of resentment and bitterness that I had towards God, but I didn't realize it at that time. And so afterwards, my dad and I are now taking care of my mom for the next 13 years, and it's like a kid taking care of an adult. And she had an accident in her pants and I'm helping clean my mom up like you would a kid with a diaper, and feeding her and making sure she's got medicine. And my grandma was with us for the first 3 years, which helped a lot. But then afterwards, it was just my dad and myself kind of in there doing this. And so my senior year comes and I'm in the middle of doing an essay that I should have done previously, probably the prior week, but I was last minute. I'm getting my finals done and my dad calls me into the bedroom and there's, my mom is on the floor and she's having another cardiac arrest. And so my dad and I gave her CPR and she ended up dying in our arms. And that moment is when that bitterness and resentment that I talked about, that's when it all came flooding out. And that's when I was mad at God. Like, how are you letting my mom just hang like that? Why would you let this go on for 13 years? And shortly thereafter, I graduated from college and I pretty much graduated right directly into a really dark place. I mean, where I'm now doing all kinds of things I'm deeply ashamed of and regret, but now I'm in the thick of it. And that eventually led to the point where I was so full of shame and regret and just an overwhelming sadness about how pointless it all seemed. And I laid down on a park bench in Hollywood, where I was living in Hollywood at that time. And I took every single pill in the sleeping box, or the box of sleeping pills that I got, and just got ready to die. And I don't know, but another miracle happened because I managed to get off the bench and I managed to find my way home. I was kind of out of it, but I was about 2 miles away and I managed to walk there. A friend called an ambulance and I had to drink this really nasty, thick black. It was horrible. I can still almost taste it now. So afterwards, I'm now kind of in this weird place with God where I'm still pretty mad, but I realize he's the only way, and he kind of obviously saved me out of the situation. And I was having a conversation with my best friend Steve, who's known me since I was 5 years old. I mean, my best friend in life. And he was just asking me, he said, so how long did the doctor say that your mom would live? And I'm like, oh, well, everybody said she's like 30 years old, bucket list, make sure it's checked off because that's all she's got. That's it. And He's like, well, how old was she when she had her cardiac arrest? I said, well, she's 38. And so he said, do you think it's possible that God gave you 8 years with your mom that you never should have had? I didn't have an answer for him, but it made me think, and it made me reevaluate my relationship with God. And it wasn't long before I returned to him and then began sort of the slow, gradual, steady place where I reclaimed and regained my relationship with him. And that's where I met my wife, Vicky, was in church. And so it was a powerful moment of God bringing everything full circle in my life. But it was also that moment where you realize you have to heal. If you let things just go unprocessed, they will deal with you. And so in our parenting side, this was the backstory of some of the pain and some of the regret and the lack of character and insecurity and all the things I was feeling about being a dad. This is part of where that came from, but it was a big part.
Yeah, and I wanted to share a really amazing redeeming thing, because we would be not long after that, a couple months after he got out of the hospital. I didn't know any of his backstory, right? And then I got to know him. We became best friends. And as we began dating, it's interesting, we were planning the wedding, and I remember it was like the day before we were getting married, and he showed me across the street from the church that we were getting married in was the park and the park bench right across the street.
Yeah.
And I just wonder, how amazing God is to redeem something like that. And it was the beginning of a really awesome.
God pays attention to the details, and there's a lot more in the stories that we'll share of how God exactly shows up in details.